Master, our siesta, what about it? We've been on the road since dawn.
A night never
I know,
sleeps.
a night never sleeps, a night never eats, a night lives on adventure, but I'm not a knight.
Shut up.
Oh, no. I'm nobody. I know nothing.
I've always loved Don Quixote. He's the patron saint of lost causes, which seem to be most of mine. It all started back in the 70s when my Uncle Frank took me to see this movie at the Park Theater over on Canby Street called The Man of La Mancha. My uncle was astonished that I'd never read Cervantes in school. He always picked the best movies, the ones that made you think. I told my uncle after the movie that when I grew up I wanted to be just like Don Quixote, although I know these days I look more like Sancho. It's really stuck with me ever since I was a boy. Every day I go up against these corporate giants, and it's like I'm fighting a lost cause. I'm a third-generation funeral director. That's all I want to be. I want to help people. But these death care conglomerates are all about profit. I had to become Don Quixote. Off we went, tilting at windmills. Only a very strange thing happened. The first was we discovered that the giants were real. And the second thing, even stranger, is we started to beat them. We started to win. I think I'm best at working with the people, helping them work out the arrangements, and then being at the church or the venue to help direct the service. I've never really been involved in the preparation of the deceased. To be honest, I've never had the guts. It's so important, though, to work with the people. It's like every funeral is a portrait, a painting of a life. And the more involved the family are, really the more magnificent the painting. You gotta remember, funerals are for the living. We're here to do what the family needs. We serve around 1,200 families a year. That's about 3 families every day. In our area, the average full service that we provide costs around $3,000. But if you're going to a corporate death care conglomerate anywhere in this neighborhood, it's closer to double that. It's about $6,000. My grandpa came to town back in 1906, and he was looking for various business opportunities down here. He ran a general store up in Bonanza Creek during the gold rush in the Yukon, but he could tell things were winding down. He comes to town and goes to church on Sunday, and he hears this angel singing in the choir, and he's absolutely smitten with her. He's got to get introduced to her, and he finds out that she helps her mom lay out the corpses in the church. So Grandpa figured that if he could get to know the funeral directors, maybe they would introduce her. So my grandpa went into the funeral business to get a date. The angel in the choir was actually a professional opera singer by the name of Kate O'Connor. Grandpa married her in 1915, and they had 3 kids. Grandpa had a stroke, though, in 38 and died in 42. And at that point, Kate and my mother Ellen and her brother, my Uncle Frank, took over the family business. Sadly, Uncle Frank died quite suddenly in 1975. He was just 52, had a massive heart attack, and he was gone. Mom and Grandma tried to carry on the business, but the banks basically just wouldn't let a woman run the business, and they weren't even able to get a loan. I thought it was pretty strange. She was the first woman ever to graduate from the California College of Mortuary Science. In my mind, she was a pioneer in this work, and yet they didn't trust her with a loan. And it seemed to me the only reason was that she was a woman. So anyway, I had to take over in 1978. The firm needed money, and we were under the threat of corporate takeover by the death care conglomerates. Ironically, in 1991, we bought out the former head office of the second biggest death care conglomerate, the Lowen Group, in New Westminster. In 1999, that conglomerate, which had about $5 billion invested in it, actually filed for bankruptcy protection. The death care conglomerates would go out and they'd buy all of these small family firms, but they wouldn't put their real names on the signs. They basically were pretending to be the original family owners. We called it stealth ownership. Lowen emerged from bankruptcy as the Alderwoods Group in January 2002, and then they were bought by Service Corporation International, SCI, in 2006. So SCI is now the biggest conglomerate. There are things that are really useful for people to know. In British Columbia, for example, legislation does require any funeral home to provide a price list, and I think most of the provinces in Canada. And embalming isn't really a legal requirement anywhere unless you're crossing an international border. But Wall Street doesn't always tell you these things. Greed can be a pretty defining motive. It leaves us family firms in a position where we're fighting for ethics constantly. The most astonishing thing about all of this is that we've gone up against these corporate giants 5 times, and we've defeated them 4 out of 5 times. I mean, how is that possible? No one was more astonished than us. One of our first victories was the battle for the control of Mountain View Cemetery. In 1994, the city got a proposal to privatize the management of the cemetery from the Lowen Group. I got a call from a former city council member, Reverend Bernice Gerard, asking me if I thought the privatization of Vancouver's only cemetery was a good idea. She said that the other politicians didn't seem to think that death was good politics. I told Bernice I thought it was a terrible idea. Wall Street already owned the other 2 major cemeteries serving Vancouver and neighboring Burnaby there, Ocean View and Forest Lawn. If we gave the only other cemetery to the same stock market driven corporations, we'd all be paying for the rest of time. On the 16th of May, 1996, 75 different groups, organizations, and leaders showed up on the steps of City Hall. It was a sight to see. All these people, hundreds of people, carrying signs saying our heritage is not for sale. Nobody really thought we could beat Lowen, but there was so much anticipation, all of this excitement, hundreds of people on the steps of City Hall. The City Hall itself was packed. And then after 32 speakers, the chair, George Puyo, stands up and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, there seems to have been a mistake. The people of Vancouver actually believed we were considering privatizing our cemetery, but we can tell you here and now that is not the case." Nobody there was more surprised than me. To be honest, it had never even occurred to me that we could win. We were there because that was what was right. That was why I carried on my family's vocation in the first place.
Hello?
When my Uncle Frank died, I was a philosophy student at UBC. And one day my grandma called me up and she said, "Tom, if you don't quit school tomorrow and take over the family business, it's going to be sold to some guy named Ray Lowen." I was really confused by that. I'd vowed all my life, I'd get ribbed by my school friends about being the nephew of the undertaker, and I was never going to be a funeral director. And then all of a sudden, the family business was going to be sold. I went down to the beach and I found a big rock and I sat on that rock for about 4 hours trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And the next day, I went out to school and quit. I was 4 months away from a degree in philosophy. I was working hard to get unemployable. But I quit and I went into the family business. I know what I want from my own arrangements. I don't believe in cremation. A nice, quiet mass of Christian burial at my church, Saints Peter and Paul, followed by burial at the Gardens of Gethsemane and my tomb with a view. People love to ask me what I thought of 6 Feet Under. Well, there's a couple of truths about 6 Feet Under. First of all, technically it's pretty accurate. It's pretty authentic in terms of the technical process of what we go through in funeral service. Second of all, in all honesty, I've never met a funeral family anywhere near as colorful as the Fishers, but you gotta be, right, when you're part of a subject of a dramatic show like that. But the third thing is that even though 6 Feet Under was never kind to the conglomerates, in my experience in real life, the death care conglomerates are far worse than that show ever depicted them.
Hi, Mum. This is General George Armstrong Custer. Sounds good, huh? We're just having a wonderful holiday here in North Dakota at a pleasant spot called Little Bighorn. Yes, we should be back, week Thursday. Well, maybe a week Friday. I think I'm going to get that haircut you wanted.
Back in 1987, I took a bit of a tangent from funeral service. I thought I'd run things for a good decade and handed my brother the keys. And I went off and started a new high-tech company called Videogram International. We built the world's first fully automated television studio. I felt that television was the sort of Roman soapbox of the modern age, and everyone should have a chance to be able to express themselves. Everybody should be able to be on air.
I wish I was there, but no, I wish you were here, because it's fun.
Maniac, brainiac, winning the game. The miracle of Jesse James.
Hi, Mom and Dad.
Hi.
Guess what?
We just got married. Hey, listen, happy anniversary. What is it, is it your 200th anniversary? No, I'm kidding. Listen, it's a videogram. Have fun, guys.
Our first customer in Canada was Moses Neimer of City TV. He called it Speaker's Corner.
The socialists and communists and their fellow travelers seek to undermine the confidence of Americans in their economic system. They concentrate their major attack against profit.
It was an amazing education being president of a public company for 2 years. But sadly, as the market takes a greater and greater hold over your business, in short order, we ended up selling our soul to Hollywood, and I resigned. Leaving the high-tech world and coming back to funeral service, though, in all honesty, over those 5 years, I was astonished how much ground we independents, we family firms had lost. Having had all of that experience in multimedia and then being a president of a public company for a couple of years, and then coming back to funeral service and seeing how backward everything was, I just didn't see how I could do nothing and look my kids in the eye. To me, to be a professional, I had to become an activist. So here we are now, fighting Wall Street in a courthouse called the Public Square. During the Depression, 4 constituencies got together to rebuild an economy that was in a shambles. Those 4 constituencies were academia, the universities. They were the fledgling trade unions. They were the government. And the 4th constituency, a group that I'm pretty big on, were called small enterprise or local or family enterprise. You know, we were the folks who grew the potatoes and the carrots and the cabbages. They were the currency of the Depression. Nobody had any money. But those four groups got together, they worked together, and they created the greatest economy in the history of man. And if we're going to save ourselves now, they're going to have to get acquainted again. So I'd like to ask those four groups, individuals, no matter which of those four groups you're a part of, how can we begin to truly communicate effectively and authentically? Secondly, how can we ensure that every political party, that every one of our institutions starts to answer to the needs of its constituents rather than the needs of its financial masters? Technically, the marriage of financial and political power is the textbook definition of a fascist state. We can't allow ourselves to be distracted anymore, no matter which of those constituencies we hail from. The truth of the matter is we've simply got to rise above our differences. We've got to put them aside. Successful oppression has always been figuring out how to get the victims to blame each other. Funeral service takes a toll. It's a 24/7 job. Somebody's got to be there, somebody that you can rely on. I think Uncle Frank would be proud. He used to say he was the last to let you down. That was the campaign he used when he ran for office as a MLA in 1960. In fact, his debating partner, Senator Ray Perot, claimed that Time magazine actually recorded Uncle's campaign quote and attributed that to him, which is kind of funny for me because that line has been everywhere in funeral service since I was a kid. So it's kind of cool to think that Uncle Frank first dreamed it up. My favorite line from The Man of La Mancha was the scene where Cervantes is being accused of being an idealist. His fellow prisoners are basically holding him on trial during his imprisonment in the dungeons of the Inquisition. And they're accusing him of being mad, of being an idealist, and Cervantes responds, "Quite frankly, I've never had the courage to believe in nothing." I love that line. But even better, later on he's asked, who knows where madness lies? He says, perhaps to be too practical is madness. Perhaps to be too sincere is madness. Perhaps to be too real is madness. But maddest of all, to see life as it is and not as it should be. A funeral home's a scary place, but that's where I was born. My folks said, son, you'll fit in, boy, what a load of corn. I got the undertaker blues. I think I'm gonna lose my mind. It can't be understated, that I've been underrated in what I've undertaken to do with my time. I walked into my doctor's office. The nurse, she took a fright. She says, go into the corner, please, and try to stay out of sight. I got the undertaker blues. Think I'm gonna lose my mind. It can't be understated, that I've been underrated in what I've undertaken to do with my time. Well, I rolled into the cemetery. The guy with the shovel smiles. So many people under him that nothing gets him riled. I got the undertaker blues. I think I'm gonna lose my mind. it can't be understated, that I've been underrated in what I've undertaken to do with my time.